Hey folks, David here with Philippine American couple. Today, I really don't know how to do this video for sure. I don't know how to tell this story, but I'm going to try. I know that it's going to take several weeks um, for me to tell this story. But I think at this point, it's important that I try to share the story about my coma and my experience and the hell and back that my wife Lorelei and myself went through. If you're kind of squeamish, you're not going to want to watch this video. We don't have any graphic imagery, photographs to show you really, but I'm going to tell you some things that would happen to me in my coma that a lot of people would find very disturbing. Before I get into that part of this, what I want to do is, if Lorelei, my beautiful wife, watches this video, because this is a very hard subject for her as well. I want everybody out there and her to know that I do have an understanding of what she went through during this time. I can't say that I completely understand it, how hard it was for her, of course, but during the time of my coma, Lorelei had many, many, many low moments. She had a few good moments. There was, the guy that married us, Clark Thomas, who stayed in touch with her, took it back to his congregation and prayed and spread the word along my colleagues, former colleagues, to do those things, which gave Lorelei great comfort. Lorelei stayed at my bedside, not only for the 10 actual calendar days, but, she's been there beside me the whole way. But she literally wouldn't leave the hospital until they made her. She was my advocate. She challenged them, the doctors, on their care, what they're doing, what's next. She prayed and prayed, held my hand. So I do have a good understanding. Not a complete understanding of how hard things was. We had one niece, Mariana, who tried to be very supportive to Lorelei, and I appreciate that. I had another niece, Christina, who asked my wife if she could borrow money, a lot of money, while I'm dying, while I'm laying there on the bed in a coma. We had friends that stepped up to the plate, Baldy and Haysha, looking after Lorelei, being concerned for her. We had other long-term friends that basically could care less, which broke Lorelei's heart. So through all of this, Lorelei went through the huge range of emotions of the doctors every day telling her your husband is going to die, to I want to borrow money, you need to give me money, to people telling her to hang in there. My brother Johnny in Dallas stayed in touch and tried to be supportive from a distance the best he could, and that was comforting to Lorelei. But I can't fully fathom everything she went through. But I am very appreciative of her dedication to me. And if she ever watches this, because like I said, this is a very sore subject for her, I just want her to know that I have always been very proud of her. And I'm very thankful and grateful for everything that she's brought into my life. And she is the most important thing in my world. All right, I'm going to take a little break and then try to get into my story a little bit. All right, let me try to set the background, paint the picture for you of what led up to this, because I think some of this is important. Back in 2015, I had to retire from teaching at a local college where I'd been for over 20 years due to health issues. Had to give up a job that I really enjoyed. Didn't really enjoy the people in higher ed, I gotta admit. I didn't like the games they tried to play, the lies, but I enjoyed the work. And outside of the college, I really enjoyed a lot of the people that I worked with, and the students were always great. But in 2015, I had to give it up. And the reason I gave it up was because I was in heart failure. My lung disease was progressing and causing issues. And I was starting to get these infections on a regular basis. And I needed to have a pacemaker put in. So, just thought it was time to focus on health. And okay, so during after I left, I actually wound up having two different pacemakers and defibrillator put in. Went from a 2 lead to a 3 lead. Numerous rounds of IVs coming through the central PICC line. Of course, my kidneys were starting to shut down, which I didn't know at the time. And of course, I had all kinds of other little health issues, bad back, bad neck, bad legs, bad everything. Arthritis, just everything that you get when you're a fat old person. And sometime in early 2018, I went through another round of antibiotics through a PICC line. And that seemed to work okay. It was a real pain. I had to take IVs every 8 hours on the hour, but it's all right. And, you know, I, it's strange that when you're so sick, you really don't know what normal is. So you get a new norm. And I was just going through daily life, doing the best I can, barely not realizing how sick I was. And late 2018, I was still passing out a lot, even with the defibrillator, still having issues, still a lot of fatigue, a lot of issues. Kidneys, by then I could tell my kidneys were not working right. They were shutting down. My levels were going up. So here's kind of what happened was I woke up one morning, went into the living room to watch TV as always, get something to eat, get something to drink. And the last thing I remember is sitting down on the couch and taking a nap. That's it. Simply sat down to take a nap. All right, give me a minute, guys. All right, let me apologize again. Because I know this video is going to be choppy and messy and not well done. But I'm just going to talk to you from the heart, from what happened. And it's not an easy thing to do. I know on the calendar that I was in a coma for only 10 days on calendar. But my coma lasted months, if not a year. And like I've said, if you're a little squeamish, you may not want to be listening to my story. The next thing I remember was becoming aware that I was in what I'm going to call a body wash bag, a wash bag. It was very, very similar to a body bag, traditional black body bag. Mine was very much different because it was opaque, it was clear, but it was really thick material, maybe 10 mils thick. It was, it had a injection port where they connected a hose to by my face and another one down my feet for drainage. I became aware of my surroundings, of being in this bag. And I couldn't move, was never able to move during the months and months of torture. Was never able to move. What I could do was see out of one eye. And as I looked around, I was in a facility that was a round room, maybe 12 to 15 layers high, with about 30 drawers like the one I was in. And there was a center table, or a table in the center of the room, a stainless steel one, and hoses dropping down from the ceiling. And what would happen was the room was basically for body storage. So the attendants, or the processors, I call them processors, the processor would take a body out of a drawer, put them out on the table, stick the connecting hose to the input port, and you'd be flushed with this very thick liquid, clear liquid, once again, but kind of thick like, motor oil, but clear. And this would go on, and then you'd go back in your drawer. And this is what the processors did. They processed us. They were preserving us, I guess. All I could do is observe this looking through a blurry eye because of the liquid that was always on the goop that was always on your face. A few days after being in this room, I don't know, it was my sixth time, I don't know. I was brought onto the table, and each time I would fight and think in my head, how can I get the attention of this person so they understand that I'm not dead? I couldn't move. I couldn't vocalize. I was immobilized. I was dead, but I wasn't dead. And the processor, I'm going to call him processor number one, junior processor. I guess he recognized that my eye was opened. And it seemed to freak him out and make him confused, which I could relate to. He went and got another processor to come for a second opinion, I guess. I couldn't understand the language, but I could pick up and understand enough that they were debating what to do. Processor one was basically saying, this isn't right, something's wrong here. Our dead body here, is opening his eye. Processor number two is basically telling processor number one, it doesn't matter, his body's been bought and paid for, we have him sold, so he's our property, he's dead. This, during these events, was the first time I was murdered. And as processor number one, I guess, went to go find more help, or somebody to higher up on the food chain. Processor number two decided, since I was bought and paid for, that he would just make sure there was no question. So he moved the injection port of the bag directly over my mouth and attempted to murder me, injecting the liquid directly and drowning me. The actions of processor 2 of shoving the hose directly over and trying to drown me was extremely painful. I still couldn't move, of course. I was still dead, I guess, but alive. This torture went on for hours and hours. Processor number 2 seemed bound and determined to resolve the issue of whether I'm dead or alive himself. At some point, another gentleman came in the room, or actually it was 3 gentlemen that came in the room and took a look to verify for themselves that my eye, I guess, was open or there was any signs of life, and had processor number 2 stop what he's doing. They were debating whether I need further study or they needed to continue to try to murder me. I guess luckily for me, they decided that I needed to be further studied why there was life or movement in my eye or consciousness in my eye. So the attempt to murder me at this point was stopped. And this is when I started to figure out where I was. And I don't mean to offend anybody or stereotype anybody because of what happened in my coma and the torture and the hell I went through for all those months. But I finally figured out that I was in India, of all places. And my fractionally corpse was brought in front of what you would typically see or think of as a Indian guru from like the 70s. You know, wearing the white pants, shirtless, sitting Indian style, with a long beard. I had to go in front of this person, and however it was, because remember, I still couldn't talk, I couldn't move, I had no sense of conscience. I mean, I had consciousness in my brain, but I couldn't do anything but see, and that was barely, I could barely see. So he was going to decide my fate. So here I am in front of the Indian guru, and without us using vocal words, he let me know and explain that I died back in the United States, and my body was sold or donated for medical research. And since what they bought was a dead body, that and they don't buy humans. They don't buy live humans. They buy dead bodies. So from his perspective, I was their property. They bought me. They had a customer lined up in Mexico. And I knew that I had to convince him that I wasn't a dead body, that I had rights, that they couldn't own me, um, they couldn't sell me. It would be murder, which they already tried to do, to chop me up for medical research. Now, this process went on for days. Now, let me say, in all fairness, our Indian guru was a very nice man. He was a very nice person. So the decision, or the final decision, rested with our Indian guru friend. And his opinion, his decision basically was, I have no opinion on whether you're alive or dead. That's too deep of a philosophical question to be answered at this point. But you have already been sold to a processing facility in Mexico. So therefore, we're going to basically send you to Mexico. And you can take your argument up in Mexico. So I wound up in Mexico. I don't know how I got there, but once again, when I got there, I was still in my wash bag, of course. Processed and transferred. When I got there, I was washed again, processed again. And then I was presented in front of and you guys might find this one kind of funny, a gentleman that reminded me of the most interesting man in the world from the Del Secchi beer commercials. That was out a few years back. Guy looked just like him. He was a very wise, nice man of science. And it would now become his responsibility, his duty, his task to figure out what to do with me. And I would be forced to make the same argument again. One part of me was very encouraged at the thought that I was in Mexico. just one country away from the United States. And I thought if I could make my argument well enough, this is my best chance to get back home. Now, keep in mind, I had no movement, no range of motion, no anything, and of course, no money. Now, this isn't very logical, but I was able to convince them that maybe I was alive. So to put that to the test, they decided to kill me. And so I was murdered yet again for the second time. I guess the theory was they could only kill somebody that was alive. So I was murdered. The next thing I knew, I was basically in a all-white 10 by 10 hospital room-like place. Very clean, very modern looking. Everything was stark white. The walls were like hard plastic so that you could scrub it down easily. I was in some type of hospital bed. The interesting thing about this room was it was very bright, very white. And as I lay there, I realized that I am in a three-dimensional light grid. So take a 10 by 10 room and take little bright colored LED lights or laser pinpoint lights and put them into 1 foot cubes that fill up the entire room. So that's what it was, 1 foot cubes and lights at each connecting points. And then there's a little light beam going from light to light, and these cubes are everywhere, the entire room, the entire 10 by 10 room, 100 square feet. And if I moved the one eye that I could move, because remember, I was still unable to do anything, I would break one of the light streams. And the laser points where the grid's connected would explode into an extremely bright, hotter than the sun brightness, white light that would not only hurt, but would disorient and blind me. Just a brilliant pow of light. And then what would happen is a little coin, like a dime, a nickel, a dollar coin, would burst out of it and float up in the air, twirling as it went up to the ceiling. I don't know what that was all about. At the time, I guess I thought maybe it was going towards my bill. If I was able to buy my way out, then that would be every time one of those burst, I got charged. Because there was questions about, or my concern about how could I buy my way home, but I had no money, no resources, no way to make a phone call, of course, no way to ask for help. So this went on, and I was in this room for a long time. As time went on, I was able to communicate with the most interesting man in the world in hopes of talking my way into freedom or communicating, because I wasn't able to talk, my way into freedom that I'd spent my entire career in safety and health trying to advocate for minority workers. At times, doing it for absolutely free, helping the government with guidelines and programs to support worker rights, no matter whether the workers were illegals or not. That it was important to me in my career and the people that I worked with that nobody dies for a paycheck, that temp workers are respected, the minority workers were respected, taken care of, looked after, teaching and training companies that they had the duty to protect their workers no matter who they were, what they looked like. We're all humans, we're all treated equally. They had to do this by US law, and it was morally and ethically the right things to do. I explained to him that over the years, the number of worker deaths in the state of Arkansas, where I was from, had gone down into the low 20s versus the high 30s and low 40s because of a collective effort, which means that in return, the people of his country were better off because of what I was involved in and in my career. I apologize wholeheartedly, but not being able to save everybody. That I wasn't able to change the world and prevent people from dying just because they want a paycheck, which is horrifying to think that this still happens in today's age. The next thing I know is I'm in the desert in Mexico. I'm no longer in the facility. I'm no longer surrounded by anybody. I am literally on my own, floating in the desert. It was hot, extremely hot. It was painful. I could feel every grain of sand on my skin. But I knew I had to try to figure out how to get across the border, how to make it home. This is where I come in contact with what I call the red people. You know, as I wandered the desert trying to find the border, I would come into contact with local people. That was wonderful, caring, loving, helpful, thankful, just really, really good people. And that was encouraging. They encouraged me to keep going, to keep fighting, to find the border so I can get home. And at some point, I was able to cross the border. And I came across in the Texas deserts and found what I call the red people. Now, the red people had an event going on that was like it was a Red Bull X Games event out in the middle of the desert in Texas. So, huge stadium, lots and lots of people, motorcycles, dune buggies, the whole 9 yards, all of that craziness that goes along with an X Games type event. And Red Bull was the sponsor. But this is very different. The everything was red tints, red hues, everything. Even the sand had a redness to it. I didn't get a good feeling from this. But as I made my way through, I approached the person that I thought was in charge. Looked like he was in charge. You know, most people consider me a tough guy. You know, I don't get scared. You can't intimidate me. I won't be bullied. That's always been my personality. And I'm thankful for those traits. I like those things about me. So I approached this gentleman and I asked him, I said, is there a phone I can use and where's the nearest town? Because I knew if I could just get a phone call in, if I could just call somebody back in the United States, if I could just call Lorelei and tell her I'm alive. I'm in wherever. Come and get me. Send help. If I could just do that, but I couldn't. I just couldn't do it. But I so badly wanted to. So I asked him for a phone, asked him about the nearest town, and he said, boy, just ain't that simple. You have dues to pay and hell to live through. And that's when another living hell started for me. In hopes of getting that phone call, getting help and assistance from these demonic people, I was forced to do every type of work at the X Games. I literally, one of the worst jobs was I gave out ice cold water to people, but I wasn't allowed to have any. I had to rake up their human shit out of the sands and clean it, do the trash, clean the motorcycles, pick up the garbage, um, everything you can imagine. Wasn't allowed to eat, wasn't allowed to drink. I was literally beaten in the lower back on a regular basis with a pipe. It was their favorite thing to do. And I knew I was dancing with the devil, but there wasn't a lot I could do but fight. And I've never backed down from a fight. And this was a fight. Every day in the heat, the abuse, psychological torture that these red people put me through. I fought, I prayed, I fought, I prayed. I did the chores in hopes of getting that phone call. It was one of the hardest legs of this journey. It was so bright in that desert. So bright. There was no rest for my eyes, no sleep, just torture and abuse, humiliation, over and over and over. I don't know how long it lasted. One of the hardest and most disturbing things that happened to me in the desert at the Games event was I had to keep the fires lit. Why we had fires in the middle of the desert when it never got dark, I don't know. But I had to keep the fires lit. They were extremely hot. And when competitors or people in the audience would die, the red people, they were all red people, red eyes, red skin, red tint to everything. When they died from an accident or whatever happened to them, I had to burn their bodies in the fires. That's what kept the fires so hot, was their bodies. I would take their bodies and place them in the fires, and the heat would just intensify. And the smell, oh my God, the smells was just unbelievable. It is just one of the worst days or the worst weeks or months, the worst times in my life and during this event. After months of suffering, humiliation, and torture, abuse, they beat me. The red people beat me. They wore me down. They won. They broke me and got to the point where I had no hope. No hope at all. I knew that I was never going to get to go home. That if this was hell, this is my new place. I didn't know what it was. But as somebody who's never backed down, who's always stood up for right and wrong, or has always tried to, is someone who doesn't cower, who won't allow other people to take my power and my strength. They took it. They beat me down. I gave up and died. Not proud to say it, ashamed of it. But I gave up and died. I had no choice. They won. So I was in another body processing area, room, facility, whatever you want to call it. This one was different. This room, I was on a table in this processing room. And as I looked around, I could tell that it was very morgue-like a morgue you would see in the United States on TV. You know, walls of these little 2 foot by 2 foot metal doors where they slide the bodies in and out on the metal trays. That's what this room was, very clinical. And I don't know how many there was, 20 to 100, I don't know, but it was a very big room, a very big processing. Now, one of the interesting things that you guys might find this is kind of funny. In the United States, here we had a TV show of a doctor called Dr. Poole. He's a veterinary clinic. He's a really nice looking 80-year-old man, very happy, smiles a lot, loves people, loves animals. And he was there. His name wasn't Dr. Poole, but the guy looked like him, a guy that reminded me of him. And he would repeatedly come over and check on me, and with his trademark big smile, he would say, "Yep, he still did." And I would get that notification, every few minutes that I was still dead. Now, the good thing that came about this, I realized that I know that I'm back in the United States now. I don't know where, probably Texas, since I was in Mexico. But I'm back in the United States. And how did I know this? Because he speaks very good English, perfect English, just American English. So that made me very hopeful. But while being in this room, so let me see if I can describe the room for you a little bit better. So like I said, there's these banks of walls that has these 2 foot by 2 foot drawers that I'm assuming dead bodies were in. But there are also rooms where there were live humans, like in hospital rooms, like ICU ward. And as I laid on the table, I could look over. Remember, I can't move, I can't communicate, but you can see things. And over across the way, maybe 15 to 20, 25 feet away, 30 feet, I don't know, there was an heavyset lady with black curly hair, screaming at the top of her lungs about the agony and pain she was in. And this went on for hours and days. I don't know. She kept telling them, "There's something wrong with me. There's something's wrong with me. There's something wrong with me." And doctors would tell her, "No, there's not. You're perfectly healthy. You're fine." And she's like, "No, there's something." It went on, and the screams, the begging for help, the pleading for somebody to help her. It was extremely disturbing. Her caterwauling, her crying, her just begging for help, and people just saying, "Nah, there's nothing wrong with you. Don't worry about it." It was heartbreaking, mentally disturbing. And at one point, they decided to give her some medicine to make her go to the bathroom. They thought she had a blockage, or she was constipated, I guess. I don't know. So they give her the medicine, and the screams continue. The praying continues. "Lord, help me. Lord, save me. They're killing me. It hurts. It hurts." And the medicine, I guess, forced the issue. And at some point on her bed, she pushed, I guess, or it came out of her body. It split her open like this. Her intestines spilled out everywhere. One leg went this way, one leg went this way. Blood and guts, shit everywhere. There had apparently been a large mass inside of her. About the size of a soccer ball, small soccer ball. It looked like a ball of coconut. So if you took coconut strands and you just tightened up like this, it was like that, kind of hairy-ish looking. But it split her open. Killed her, of course. But the blood, the screams, the guts that I saw, the terror on that poor lady as this happened, because I watched it happen. Nobody would help. And then, of course, she died. And then hospital personnel came into the room, made sure they didn't get their shoes all bloodied or human shit on them, stepping around her entrails that were all over the bed, the floor, the walls. Because when this came out of her, folks, you got to realize the screaming. And she just literally split open. And all of this came out. Well, they wanted to make sure that they could cover this up. And I heard their conversation. But we have to change the medical records. We have to do this so that we don't get in trouble for murdering her because we didn't do anything for her. I know we didn't take care of her. We didn't believe her. It'd be our fault, but let's all lie together. Get together, we're going to tell a lie. and make out like it's, we didn't know anything about it. They're going to cover it up. So as they discussed all of that, something strange kind of happened. My wife is from the Philippines, and there are a lot of Filipinos are in the medical field, and I guess they had a Christmas party at the hospital, a Filipino Christmas party, because about the time the doctors were wrapping up and getting their stories straight, there was 10 or 12 Filipino women carrying food somewhere to go have a Christmas party. So that was kind of weird. I don't know where that came from. Well, I guess the Christmas party went well, because what I remember is them coming back, being very happy, very joyful. Now, about this time, things are starting to get hazy for me, a little blurry for me. I didn't have the great clarity ever, but what little clarity I had was starting to slip. Things are getting fuzzy. People were beating on my chest, and I didn't understand that. I'm already dead. Why are you beating on me? So I had people beating on my chest, yelling at me, asking me questions. This was horrifying time. Part of my thought process was, what little I could think, I thought was going away. I thought I was losing my mind. I thought I was hallucinating. I thought things were getting worse. And the despair that came in, because I fought so hard and I fought so long to prove that I was alive, to find my way back home, and to be killed again. Then, of course, remember, I was already shipped once to become medical research to India. So to lose all that ground that I made proving that I wasn't dead was devastating. Absolutely devastating. It broke my heart, and I died again. It's so psychologically disturbing when you just give up, when there's nothing more you can do, that you went through hell, beaten, tortured, only to have to give up. At this point, I woke. I woke up. I didn't know I was awake. It took a while. I was dazed and confused. And let me tell you, folks, I was one pissed off mother. Um, I was mad as hell, ready to fight. My brain truly was Swiss cheese. I couldn't tell what was real what wasn't real, what was happening, what wasn't happening. Um, I had no understanding of what happened. Because remember, I simply lay down on the couch to take a nap. And then I was murdered twice, 3 times, tortured, beaten, humiliated for months. Had to fight and argue my way back. I was extremely pissed that people were hitting me. Because, I guess from my personality standpoint, not being able to defend myself has been one of the hardest things I've had to do. And I wasn't able to defend myself. If I could have, none of this would have happened. But I wasn't able to defend myself. And I thought I was in the morgue. I thought I was in a morgue. And that pissed me off. And I didn't want to be in a morgue again. Another freaking room of dead bodies. Another round of torture. I didn't want to do it. I didn't know what the hell happened to me. It was just such of a stressful and confusing time. I couldn't move after I woke. My muscles, I lost control of my muscles. I couldn't even move my arms, my hands. Couldn't do anything like that. And there was people around me, a lot of them just asking me questions. It just pissed me off more. Why the hell are you asking me questions? Why don't you help me? Take your stupid questions and shove them. It really pissed me off. And one of the people turned out or reminded me of my wife. That was helpful. But she didn't look the same, I'll tell you. She didn't look the same. You know, I thought she was an alien. I thought Lorelei was not an illegal alien, but a space alien. And I understand now it's because she probably looked sickly from being there all this time. But in my mind, she was an alien. I didn't trust her. So this confusion went on for several days. A lot of questions was asked. People coming up and visiting, which, irritated me more, asking me more questions. We had some friends that were truly good people that were there. And that was somewhat helpful in trying to get my bearings, but I was still greatly confused. Lorelei would try to show me pictures of things, and I interpreted them totally wrong. There were, you know, if she showed me a picture of an apple, I didn't see an apple. I saw something else. It was like that for days. You know, somebody said something about Texas, And that pissed me off. Just hearing about Texas, because there's no way in hell I was going back to Texas. I lived through that. I fought through that. And I just wasn't going back to that hell. And I couldn't get straight answers from anybody. I thought my phone had some weird virus because it made a weird look. My brother Johnny was on the phone at one point in time from Dallas talking about going fishing, which is fine, but everything was so chaotic. And looking back, we know it was probably the medication because I was on so much drugs. Doctors said that the drugs were making my brain loopy when I awoke. I didn't account for the hell I went through in the coma. So I even remember telling a friend of ours, I think Lorelai's an alien. We need to do an investigation on her to find out if she's human or not. After a couple of days, I was moved from ICU to a step-down room where I started to try to learn to control my muscles again. Trying to walk, which was not easy. And then the medicine that I was on just tore me up, made me feel like crap. It messed up my stomach, everything, just too much medicine. Then I was moved to a rehab center to learn how to walk again, how to move my muscles and get exercise. It was truly one of the shocking things, I guess, was how much muscle mass I lost in a matter of 10 days. Now, those 10 days were like 10 months or a year for me. And I know people don't understand and can't relate to the hell I went through during those 10 days. And I know that if I have it my way, I would never go through another coma. I know a lot of people think that people in comas don't experience anything. Well, I don't know about everybody. I just know about me. And the psychological, the physical abuse that I went through, the torture, the living hell. The nightmares still continue to this day, and we're over 2 years out. I've been diagnosed with PTSD resulting from my coma. Some of it has gotten a little better to deal with. I'm absolutely terrified of falling asleep unintentionally. So if I'm asleep, it's because I made a point to go to sleep. Laser lights, bright white lights. I don't want anything to do with those. They bug me. There's so many little things that causes flashbacks to that. I see a pipe on the ground, and the first thing I think of was being beaten in my lower back. So physically, emotionally, it's been very dramatic. It's one of the hardest things that Lorelai has gone through, and I know she still hasn't recovered from it. And I know it's one of the hardest things I've ever gone through. And I've been through a lot in my life. Folks, let me tell you. So, where do we go from here? That's one of the questions I have for myself. I don't have an answer. I just wake up every day and do what I was doing like before the coma, before the torture. I take great solace and I'm very happy about my wife Lorelai and our two dogs. Uh, that we do have good friends that supports us, that I do have a brother that is supportive and there. We have great faith and always have and always will that God walks with us every day. What lies ahead, I don't know. Will I live another 10 years? I don't know. I hope so, but I don't know. I hope that by making this video, that maybe I can reach other people who've been in a similar situation. I hope that maybe it helps me in some way deal with the trauma. I know this has been a long and probably boring video, but I do thank you very much for listening. And please feel free to give us feedback, any thoughts. I would love to hear your stories about your experience also. All right. Take care and be well.